There are 7 continents on our planet. A continent is a large section of land that is separated from other areas of land. Most of the time, they are separated by water. The 7 continents are North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica. The country we are studying today is New Zealand, and it is part of the Australian continent. New Zealand is an island country in the southern hemisphere. The first people to settle there called it Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. It has 2 main sections called North Island and South Island, with lots of smaller islands surrounding it. One of the neat things about New Zealand is that it is large enough to have a lot of different plants and animals, but it is far enough away from any other continent that it does not share a lot of common species. People did not find the island for a long time. It never had any humans at all living on it until around the year 1300. Land animals could not get to or off of the island, so there are a lot of animals in New Zealand that are not found naturally anywhere else on Earth. Plants that were common in other continents could not get to New Zealand, so there are plants found on the island of New Zealand that are not found anywhere else on the Earth. Plants and animals that are found naturally in only one place on Earth are called endemic, and New Zealand has a lot of those. One of the endemic animals found in New Zealand is the Kiwi Bird. The Kiwi Bird is a small bird that cannot fly. There are actually a few birds like the Kiwi Bird that can't fly. Scientists say that these type of birds evolved without wings because in New Zealand there are not any animals that live on the ground that eat birds. The first people to live on the island were the Maori people. They arrived on the island between the year 1250 and 1300. At this time, the island of New Zealand was covered with dense, thick forest and a lot of birds. The people wanted to grow crops, so they began to clear the land of trees. They also enjoyed eating meat, so they began to hunt animals. One of the largest birds to hunt at the time was the Moa Bird. Moa were birds similar to an ostrich, but they grew up to 12 feet tall. The Moa birds were an endemic bird, meaning that they were found only on the island of New Zealand, and they were hunted to extinction. Eventually, explorers from Europe found New Zealand. For many years, it was a trading post for ships and a small settlement for Christian missionaries as they taught and converted the Maori people to Christianity. Eventually, it became a British colony in 1840. Today, New Zealand is still part of Great Britain, but they have their own leaders and they rule themselves. They have a government similar to Great Britain, with Queen Elizabeth as the Queen of New Zealand and the head of state. The people of New Zealand, both the European colonists and the Maori people, fought alongside of Great Britain through 2 world wars and continue to have peaceful relations today. New Zealand has about 4 million people that live there, and the primary language spoken is English. Although it might sound a little funny to you and I, and there are some words that you might not recognize. Their English is similar to Australian, but a person from the United States would probably not be able to tell the difference between an Australian accent and a New Zealand accent. About 14% of the people speak Maori. There was a period of time when the British tried to eliminate the language and the Maori people by forbidding the use of the Maori language and assimilating them into the English culture. But today that has been reversed and the Maori people are encouraged to embrace their culture and speak their language. There are even universities in New Zealand just for the Maori people. New Zealand has become an interesting mix of Polynesian and English culture. One example of this is the world renowned All Blacks rugby team. Rugby is a very popular English sport, but in New Zealand it has taken on a unique flavor as the team performs the Maori War Dance before every game, and this war dance is called a Haka. A Haka is just a Maori dance, but a long time ago when the tribes would fight against each other, they would perform a fierce Haka with violent movements accompanied by words, and the words would tell the enemy what they planned on doing to them. In spite of the utter fierceness and confrontational nature of the Haka, the chant that is performed by the All Blacks is a celebration of life. The words were written by a tribal leader that had his life spared after being beaten by an enemy tribe. The food in New Zealand is a mix of English and Polynesian food, so it is similar to anything you'd find in Great Britain or any Polynesian island. One interesting dessert is an ice cream called Hokey Pokey ice cream. Hokey Pokey is the second most popular flavor of ice cream, and it is basically vanilla ice cream with sponge toffee mixed in. Hokey Pokey was actually a fairly common name for ice cream in the US and Great Britain around the time that ice cream was invented. Due to the fact that early Christian missionaries spent so much time teaching the Maori, most of them belonged to some Christian church. New Zealand has high standards of education, and more than half of the people have attended college. On the Human Development Index, New Zealand ranks just above the United States. New Zealand enjoys many of the same sports that Great Britain does, sports such as rugby, cricket, and soccer. The New Zealand rugby team, called the All Blacks, recently won the World Championship. Their name comes from the fact that the uniforms are all black. And I guess that performing the haka before a rugby game really does work. New Zealand is in the southern hemisphere, so the seasons and climate is opposite of what you might be used to. It is colder in the south and warmer in the north, just opposite of here. But in New Zealand, it never gets too cold or too hot. It is just right by most people's comfort level. The winters really don't see any snow except in the mountaintops, and the summers are not too hot in most parts of the country. There are high mountains, dry plains, and warm beaches. It is a popular place for extreme sports and adventure tourism. New Zealand is definitely a place that many people love to visit and live.